Welcome back to our Beatrice YouTube channel. Today's class will be learning how to make this beautiful vintage basque dress with yoke. It's a very simple tutorial and it's beginner friendly. This is something you like to learn. Kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so for this tutorial I already drafted my basic bodice. This is the armhole line, this is the bust point, this is the waistline and the hip line. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do now is to determine the neckline that I'm working with. In this case it's a v-shaped neckline, so I already have my 3 inches width for the width of my neckline, which is the natural neckline. And then now, okay, so this is the 3 inches. I hope you can see it now. So the depth I'm working with now depends on how deep you want your neckline to be. So for this, it's a very deep v neckline. If I can even get up to your bust point, but it doesn't have to be deep. So if you don't want it deep, you can just stop at around 6-7 inches. But for me, I'll just make it a bit low, so I'm going to be stopping it around 9.5. Okay, so once I have that mark here, the next thing is for me to connect from my neck point to the depth of my neckline. So you can either connect it in a straight form, or you can use a slightly curved part of your ruler to draw that connection. So now we have our neckline for the front. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to create that style line that we have on the front part. So to do that, I'm going to be marking out my underbust, because the design just runs through the underbust and it's stopping around under the bust area. So I'm just going to mark out my underbust line now, so I'm going to serve as a guide for me. So once I have that point, I'm going to rule it out and I'm going to label that my underbust. So this is for a big size, and normally for somebody that has a tummy, I don't like the waistline to be too far away from the underbust area. In fact, if this were to be a peplum top, most time I just place the flare just very close to the underbust so that it can conceal the tummy very well. Okay, so now the next thing is for us to draw that style line. So it depends on how you want it exactly. You can just have it straight from here to your underbust area. You can even place it like 1 inch or half an inch below your underbust area, or however it is that you want to place this. But for me, if you look at the thumbnail very well, the design just sits right under the bust. You can see that it's just under, it's not going over the bust area, it's under the bust. So I'm not going to be drawing a straight line because of this, because placing my straight line, you can see that it's not really going to fall under the bust for me, and I just want the design to just be around the under bust area. So I'm going to use my curved ruler to get that shape. So that's the slightly curved part of my ruler, and then I'm going to draw it out. So you can see now that I have it under my bust. So the next thing now is to go back to the second dart leg and then connect it to, if you want it to be on right under your under bust, you just cut it here. If you want it to be a little below the under bust measurement, you can measure half an inch or 1 inch, and then from there you're going to make that connection. So it's totally up to you. So once you have that connection, I'm going to connect this to my seam allowance. Okay, so this is the style line that I'm going to work with. So now we have this yoke settled already. Okay, so the next thing is for us to move to the back part. That's the V part of the hem. So this is a very deep V. It's very deep, it's very obvious. So depending on what you want to work with, the first thing you're going to note is the full length of the gown. So that's the full length before you had your gathers. So for me, I want it to be 32 inches before I had my gather. So I'm just going to note the 32 inches to be here. Okay, so after marking that full length, the next thing I'm going to mark now is from my waistline. I'm going to mark like 4 or 5 inches downwards. Okay, as you can see, depending on how deep you want it to be, like I said. Then after marking that 5 inches downward, I marked 5 inches in my case, you can see. So you can do 3 inches, you can do 4 inches, depending on how low you want it to be from your waistline. But because this is not really the true waistline, you know, like I said, because it's a big person, I like the waistline to just be close to the under bust area. So that's why I'm going this low. I'm going as low as 5 inches, and then I'm going to take my ruler and connect from that 5 inches all the way to the 32 inches length here. So when we draw this out now, you can see how deep the V is. You can see that it's a very deep V. So after having that, I'm going to connect that also into my seam allowance, and that is all you need to do for the front. So for the back, I have drafted my back pattern already also, and this is my zipper allowance. So the least modification that I'm going to do here is to create the yoke for the back. So as against the yoke that goes under bust here for the front, there is no bust at the back. So what I'm going to do now is just to note where my yoke stops here for the front, and I'm just going to mark a straight line there for the back. So now I'm just going to take my tape measure now and take my measurements from my armhole line to this point. So I have around 6 inches there. So I'll come here and measure that 6 inches. Okay, and then on that point I'm going to draw my straight line all the way to form the yoke for the back. This is not actually a constant. You can decide to form any yoke you want. You can make it V also, but this is what I want for my back. So now all of this now is going off as my yoke, and then just like I did for the front also, I'm going to go down by 5 inches from my waistline. Remember, this is the waistline, this is where the yoke stops. So I'm going to go down by 5 inches from my waistline, and then I'm going to measure the 32 inches length also. My hip line is 26 inches, so that's why I'm placing the 26 inches there as a guide. So this is where the 32 inches is, and then I'm going to make that connection to my deep view. And like I said, if you don't want your view to be this big, you don't have to make it this big. And then you take it to your zipper allowance, and that is all you need to do. So now we're going to cut this out so that we can cut it on our fabric. So I'm going to cut out the back yoke first. Okay, so I've cut out my back now. This is my back. I'm using a stretchy crepe fabric for this, so I'm not going to be needing a dart for this. But in your case, you can just close up your dart before you cut it out on your main fabric. But because of the nature of the fabric that I'm using, my dart, I don't actually need a dart. It's still going to be fitted on the bodice. So I'm going to set the back aside now before I cut out the front. Remember, I said this is going to run through under the bust. It means the bust is going to be sitting on this, so that this is not just going to be flattening the bust hat like that. I'm going to create like a gathers around this place so that it can give the bust enough room to sit. So to create these gathers, I'm going to do like a slash and spread here. So on my shoulder line here, I'll measure what I have. I'll divide that by 2. That's 2.5, and then I'm going to connect what I have there to my bust point. Okay, so after connecting it to my bust point, I'm going to cut out my yoke for the back, following the shape that I created. So I've cut out that shape now. This is the lower part and this is the yoke. So I'm going to set the lower part apart. So for the fullness that I want, gathers that I want to add, I'm just going to slash open what I have here, and then I'm just going to spread it a little bit so that I can use this space to add gathers to my bust line. So you can spread it as much as you want depending on how full you want that place to be and how busty the person is. So I'll go ahead now and cut all of this on my fabric and bring it back to show us what we have. Okay, so I've gone ahead to cut this out on my fabric. This is the lower part of the front, this is the lower part of the back. And then if you're adding lining to this, you cut your lining the same way you cut your main fabric for everything. So these are the yoke parts, which is also the upper part. This is the front. I can see that I've opened it up by around 2.5 to 3 inches. Okay, so I have exactly 3 inches here now. So I'm going to be gathering this to just, you can see that as I gathered it, it just puffed up a bit. So this just to give the bust area some room space, so that it's not going to flatten the bust. So this is the front yoke and this is the back yoke. So now the next thing we're going to do now is to start to sew this together. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is to remove the pins here now, and then I'm going to close this pattern back. So you can actually just gather this part, but I just want the gather to be spread evenly a bit. So once I close this pattern like this, I'm going to run gather stitch and gather this back. So after gathering it, I'll just place this pattern on it to know if I've gathered this back to the original size. So I'll go over to the sewing machine now and run a gather stitch to gather this part. Okay, so I've gone ahead to run my gather stitch and then I've gathered it. You can see I just gathered it a little bit, so this is just that my bust will not be flat. And if you lay it down, you can see that it's already giving you, so you can see this puffiness that you have there. So now you know that your bust is going to sit well in this. So now I did not cut lining for the whole part because I'm not going to be lining this fully. I cut the lining for the lower part so that I can show us how to line this neatly. So if you're going to be adding lining to this, you cut it the same way and then you go over now and fix your lining. But I'm just going to be using my bias to turn it here. You can also use your facing. So I'm going to go ahead now and turn this neckline part and then bring it back to show us how we're going to sew this to the lower part. Okay, so I have turned the neckline with bias now neatly. You can also turn with the back, but because it's a V neckline, I don't want to lose the V shape. That's why I'm turning it separately. But you should add a lining to this if you want. I'm not fixing lining because this is just for the purpose of this tutorial. So this is the V shape and you can see that it is neat. So now I'm going to unpin the lower part now and then I'm going to sew it to the yoke. So after removing the pin, you open it out like this, then you bring in your yoke to see the one that goes with each other. Okay, so once you have it like that, I'm just going to pin it now so that I can go ahead and sew it. So I'm just pinning it all the way to the. Okay, so you can see that I have pinned it round now. Here I just placed it side by side and then I pinned. So this is what it looks like now. I'll go ahead now and sew it on the sewing machine before I bring it back to show us how we're going to turn this. Okay, so I've sewn this round and this is what it looks like on the right side. So the next thing now is to line it. So to fix my lining, I'm just going to bring a lining now and then just place it on it in a way that I'm going to fold this over. So I'm placing it like this and then following the same line that I already have. I'm just going to go ahead now and pin this in place and match it up. So that is how you're going to cover all of these rough edges. That's simple. So I'll pin it to the side, to the two sides, and then I'll take it to the sewing machine and sew. So once I sew it and I flip it over, it's going to be neatly finished. So I've sewn the lining to the bodice like this. I just sew it on the cuff area and also on the side. So I'm going to turn this out now. And turning it out, you can see what we have. So now it's neatly finished. All the rough edges now have been concealed. So at this point, you just need to iron this neatly so that it can lie really flat for you. So like I said, if you're going to be adding lining to this, you fix the lining to the yoke before you sew it to the lower body, so that you can turn everything out neatly together like this. So this is what it looks like on the right side. So now I've gone ahead to sew the back also. You can see I just joined the yoke to the main bodice, and then I also turned it on the neckline. So again, if you're lining this, you don't need to just turn with bias, you just use your lining to turn out everything easily. So now I'm just going to place the shoulder together and sew it, and also I'm going to sew it on the side before we fix our gathers. Okay, so I've joined the shoulder together and also the side. So this is what the dress looks like now. This is the front and this is the back. Okay, so this is where we're going to fix our zipper. So the next thing to do now is to measure the hem of this dress, and then use that to cut out the remaining parts of the dress. So I'm just taking it together now, and then I'll take my tape to measure around it. So I have around 29 inches, so I'll just approximate that to 30 inches. And remember, this is for both the front and back. Multiply by 2 is going to give me 60 inches. So depending on how full you want this gather to be, you can cut out 60 multiply by 2, that's 120, or by 3. But I don't have enough fabric, so I'm just going to do 60 multiplied by 2, and that's going to give me a fabric of 120 inches length. So now, to know the length to complete your dress, you need to measure your full length. Okay, so in this case my full length is 42 inches, and then I have cut out 32 inches. Remember, I stopped at 32 inches here, so I'm going to deduct the 32 inches from 42. Sorry, that's going to give me 10 inches. So I'm just going to add like 2 inches seam allowance to it. So I'll go ahead now and cut out the fabric of 12 inches by 120 inches. So like I said, I don't have enough fabric, so I'm just going to be joining them together to make my 120 inches. So I have cut it out now. It's two separate fabrics, so I'll just join it together, and then I'm going to gather it on the hem. So after gathering it on the hem, you cut a sleeve of your choice. So in this case, it's a puffy sleeve that's on the thumbnail, but my fabric is not enough, so I'm just going to cut a basic sleeve and sew to it. So I'll go ahead and sew these two together now and gather it around the hem of the dress, and then I have my basic sleeve here. So I'm just going to sew it to the armhole area. So I'll do this now and bring it back to show us what we have. Okay, so the lower part is fixed now, and I've also fixed my basic sleeve. So this is what the front looks like. You can see our deep V here, and this is what it looks like on the back. I've also gone ahead to fix my zipper on this, so I'll take it to the mannequin so that we can see what it looks like. Okay, so this is what the dress looks like on the mannequin. You can see our V neckline here, and also the yoke part that we gathered a bit. So you can see that the gather is so small, it's very unnoticeable, but it's important for you to have your bust sit perfectly on the dress. So this is what the full dress looks like, and this is the deep Basque V that we have on the hem of the dress. Now you just need to iron it very well so that it can come out really nice. I hope you enjoyed making this tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.